Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. Excellent material, so let's just tune right in and say hello to the Rabbi. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. So good to be with you again. We hope you had a good day yesterday. We missed you, but we're glad to be back with you today. So I'm going to turn the class to you, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody out there in um, Webland, I guess. And here in the Zoom chat, I'm going to share the screen now, and we're starting a new chart. I don't think we've done this before. I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to move this over here, and okay, I'm giving away the show here a little bit. Okay, so this, like the other one, is the chart on Do Not Rob, same columns. This is Chofetz Chaim, the Rabbi Kagan, who wrote the concise book of mitzvahs. And when this is blank, it means he didn't quote this mitzvah. And I'm just finding this out. This is a late discovery of mine from reading the Divine Code. And then this is chinuch. He comes in every mitzvah, and this is the number he gives it. And then this do not murder, and I put in here sort of like a thematic explanation that do not murder because do not destroy human creativity. Because according to my book, that we're here to create in the image of God, just like God creates. We're here to create. We have the ability to create, and really the duty. So you don't want to destroy that ability because it adds to the world that God's created, and it gives God more to think about, more to relate to, which is what God does. And in this column, we're dealing with why each step is extra above from the one before. And here we're marking whether it's critical or optional or maybe developmental. And in the Divine Code column, I've started marking on the pages in the Divine Code right now, murder, which is don't take life illegally. And that leads to the next one, which is sometimes it is legal. And one of them is, there's another one where anybody that's guilty of a crime and is processed by the court has a duty to execute them, and that'll be in the court section. So we're not there yet. But here, this is an individual. If you see somebody trying to murder somebody else, trying to kill somebody else, you have a duty to prevent that murder in any way necessary, even if it means murdering the attempted murderer, the Rodef, yes. And the Chofetz Chaim never even mentioned this. That's why I missed it, because I was really basing. He has 271 mitzvahs that are still applicable today. The Chinuch says there's 365, but doesn't give you a list of them. You have to kind of search through him and see if he mentions that it's still applicable, which I'm in the middle of trying to do. To document, I have a list, but it goes over. He says 365. I got 374, so I'm making some kind of mistake. But at any rate, he certainly has more than Chofetz Chaim. And this one is prevent the murder any way necessary. That very familiar. I was very familiar with that. I just never thought of it because Chofetz Chaim didn't listen. I don't know why. Possibly because they explain that in the English version of his book, they explain that there's about 30 mitzvahs that Jews have that pertain to the land of Israel. When you're farming there and you've got produce, you have to give certain tithes and certain other issues with produce from the land. And he was living in Europe and not very much hope. He tried to get to Israel, never made it. So it may be that it just wasn't relevant to his community, so he omitted it. This may also not have been relevant to his community because, first of all, if you're living in a land like Canada or the U.S. or most lands today, do not like their citizens to take the law into their own hands. To call the police. But the truth is, sometimes you can't. You have to do something. There's YouTube videos on this where, lately there's been holdups and so on where people got in the way and they accosted the robber or the thug and prevented the crime. So, but this is an allowance to murder the guy. Um, there have been cases in I can't remember the exact details, but there have been cases where somebody did that and they were prosecuted, which is I think well, one case, the famous case of a couple in where was it, in Louisiana or something, that people were marching by their house and they stood on the doorstep with their guns to prevent anybody from attacking them. Oh, and there's that kid Kyle that murdered somebody, and he was in self-defense. That was his own personal self-defense. But they also, part of the story was he came there to prevent other people from rioting. So it gets dicey. But the truth is, there's a mitzvah to prevent murder, but you have to be sure of your ground. You can't, for one thing, you have to be sure that you need to murder the guy in order to stop him. If you can disable him by shooting him in the leg or something like that, then that's what you should do. On the other hand, they train the police to shoot to kill because you can't be sure. They're not sharpshooters. It's not the Wild West. You don't have control of your gun to be able to just wing the guy. And if they're shooting back at you, you're in danger. So it's quite a dicey situation, but it's a mitzvah, and it bears discussion, and it's critical because it's an allowance that you have to know about. Now that brings us to the next one, which also I missed because the Chofetz Chaim didn't discuss it, and this is
Rabbi,
that
getting back to the last one just for a second. I mean,
right,
is
right.
there not a degree of culpability if you could have stopped it and you didn't?
Yes. Oh. If you could have stopped, you didn't. So there, no, I don't think so. First of all, a failure to act is never as bad as acting wrongly. So it's always, this is a positive mitzvah. It's not a negative. It's not don't stand idly by. It's an active thing. You should take action to prevent the murder. There's a similar one we had in the Do Not Rob, where we had no, we're going to have another one. I'm sorry, it's coming up later in this list, where it is a negative. Maybe I should have put it now that I think of it. Maybe I should have put it next door, but it's a different set of circumstances. So we'll see. We'll get to it soon. Right now, we're dealing with murder, actual murder, and if you fail to prevent him, so I didn't murder. There was, let's say I didn't prevent the guy and he murdered the other guy in wrongful murder. So I didn't murder him. I just failed to act. I'm not sure I could have helped. You never know. So you can't really prosecute me for that. It'd be a very hard thing to prove that I could have done something, that I could have prevented the whole thing from happening. It's always a question. So you're asking a good question, but the answer I think is that you're not culpable. But now the other one is, let's say there's an accidental murder in which you're involved. You were responsible for an accidental death. So this is another interesting thing because I miss this because normally it's normally thought of as a rule just for the Jewish people because it's described in the Torah that there were refuge cities of refuge, and Moshe set up 3 of them before he died, but they weren't operative because you needed 6 to be operative. He set up 3 on the east side of the Jordan in the land that he had bequested to 2.5 tribes, and Joshua had to set up the other 3 on the other side of the Jordan, on the west side, in the proper land of Israel. And once they were set up, they became cities of refuge. And how they worked was that if someone killed another person, murdered another person, either willfully or by accident. We don't know yet. Just as soon as it happens, any relative or a close relative of the murdered victim is allowed to take revenge, if you like, to kill, revenge the death of his relative by killing the perpetrator. There's an allowance. However, if there's a protection given, they have to flee to a city of refuge. Once they enter the borders of a city of refuge, that allowance to the relative disappears. You're no longer allowed to attack him. And what's that? Yes. Now, but if they leave the city, then the allowance comes back. But then what happens is he hasn't stood in trial yet. Now, the court finds out that there is a person who killed somebody, so they will ask for witnesses. If witnesses come forward, they will send a sheriff and bring the guy back to the court to stand trial, and then they will have to decide: was this an accidental death or a willful death? And if it was a willful death, and with warning and all the accoutrements, so then they'll execute the guy. They'll find him guilty of murder and execute him. But if there are circumstances that make it not willful murder, so it's a level of accidental death, then they will send him back to the city of refuge, and with the sheriffs to protect him, and he'll have to stay there. Now, this is very weird. He has to stay there as long as the high priest of the time, at the time, the one that was in office at the time of the murder, until that man dies. When that man dies, then he is released from exile to the city. He can go back home, and the allowance to the relative disappears. The relative is no longer able to take revenge. Now, this could happen the day after or 50 years later. It makes no difference. It's contingent on the death of the high priest. So all this sounds like just a chok, an irrational mitzvah of Hashem. Hashem just said, I want it done this way. So, okay, you want it done this way, we'll do it that way. But you can't really extrapolate it. On the face of it, you would think that you can't really extend it to another situation because there's no rationale. It doesn't make sense. However, because it was brought down in the Divine Code on page 346 and on, so I looked it up, and there the Chinuch does say that not only is there a duty on the court to process this and send the guy to exile, there's also a duty on the person who killed accidentally to exile himself. So he is also encumbered by the mitzvah, which means, they say, and they said that even a Gentile, a non-Jew, who kills somebody should exile themselves. They don't have to go to this city. They can go to any other place, just change their place so that they're in exile, because that is an act of contrition, that is an act of publicizing that it's not a good thing to happen, that for some reason God let me be involved or made me involved in a terrible situation. I must be at fault somewhere, and I'm going to pay for it by going into exile, and also I don't want to present myself to the people who may know me that I killed a relative. So, not giving them permission to kill me, but I don't want to be in their face either. That kind of idea. So, so Divine Code does count it as operative today. That if somebody, let's say, a car accident, you in a terrible car accident, somebody died, so then you should go into exile. You should change your place. Exactly how far? Does that mean you have to change your country or just your city or just your neighborhood? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. The way it's stated in the in the in the book, it says change the city. But how do you define city? Is that, let's say I live in Metro Toronto, and there's we used to have like borough. Let's say if you live in New York, you have different boroughs. Is it enough to go from one borough to another, or can you go to the suburb where there is a different city council? Toronto, there's a different city council just a mile or two north of me, but it's still just one contingent city. It's just you know same traffic lights and everything else. So is that enough? There'll be all kinds of questions, details within the rules, but the idea of exile would still apply. So and since the divine code accounts this, so I'm not sure I would have, but they do, so I'll follow their suit and say that they should uh, um, do that. So that is mitzvahs that come into this thing. When, of course, when you're everybody understands, the whole world understands that murdering somebody is the worst crime. Everybody's got um, people that do that do get involved. I remember I had when I was managing apartments, I had a tenant that confided to me that they once did kill someone. I think they intruded into their apartment. They were scared or whatever. They wound up killing the guy. And he felt guilty. It was like 10 years later. He still felt guilty. He was carrying a real guilt on himself. It's a known thing. We may think that it's we could live with it because we're so um, anesthetized to it from what we see on TV and the movies, but when it actually happens, it's quite different. So that's just something to realize. So go to the next one. Now, the next one is uh, along the lines of violence. Do not hit, which is you're not killing somebody, but you're physically violent. Don't violently diminish human creativity. So because when you're violent, when you hit someone, you're restraining them. I mean, like somebody who feels threatened or chastised, whether they accept it, they can fight back or not fight back, but whether they do or not, this fact that someone was able to physically violate their space, their autonomy, diminishes their creativity. They have no choice but to fight back, or and their whole mindset changes from one of what can I do positive to who can I fight back at. So that is a further diminishment of human creativity. If we look at it that way, then I would say it's critical. And I think they mentioned it too, that you're not allowed to hit. Without this analysis, you might say that no, it only said do not murder. Maybe there's, maybe you can allow to hit. It doesn't make sense, but since it
Yeah,
didn't
Rabbi,
say it,
in
should have said it. But
in my
it's
role as
you have to treat it
security.
as a subset of murder. Any comments on that?
Well, Rabbi, yeah, I was just
From
inquiring, like in my role as security. I mean,
um,
sometimes
I'm not hearing you.
circumstances.
Hold on, hold on. I gotta do something here. Um, I gotta go here and do this. Uh, oh, I've got these new headphones now. Not showing up on. Have they gone dead? Just a minute. Hmm, the power's off. I tested them just before. They said 60% of power. Yeah. Okay, so now, but it's not showing up here. Here it is. Okay, so the microphone is there, and this is the headset. Okay, so I think it's better now. Can I say something? Can,
Yeah,
who was
we can
talking
hear you, Rabbi. No problem.
before?
Yeah,
I
my
can't hear
question
anything
had
now.
to do with when you said do
Oh
not
boy.
hit. In my role as security, occasionally
So
the
much for
no, you can't hear me, obviously.
I'm not hearing anything. Maybe hmm.
Yeah. I can hear you, Dan. I can hear Rabbi.
I hear you. I hear you right through this normal speaker, so maybe this is the power's off. No, I don't think so. It's just connected. It said it was connected. I suspect the battery, um, which means I should have run it. It's got about 5 hours. I don't know how long I was running it. Spare 10%. Yeah, the battery's very low, so I just have to put it on the power.
But we can still hear you, Rabbi, even if you're not using
Yeah,
your
because
headset.
now I'm not using headphones. I'm just using the Okay. All right. So come back here. Just do this. Okay. So who was speaking? Who had a question?
Dan here, Rabbi. I was asking about what you said. Do not hit. In my role as security, occasionally the case may pop up, and I do my best to show self control. But I mean, when you're dealing with the violent, I mean, occasionally, I've got to disarm and detain, and
That's
yeah.
a very good question. I never even thought of it. I'm surprised. But you're a policeman. You're in charge. Been given authority to maintain the peace. If someone gets out of hand, you have to have the ability to to get them to behave, and sometimes that requires physical force. It's interesting. Um, so once that's brought to the fore, it's interesting that the whole source of this idea, do not hit, if we look up the verse, you'll see it's talking about where somebody had done something wrong, it was in court and was in the Torah was punished with lashes. And so the guy is an agent of the court, and he's striking the guy, lashing him. So obviously that's allowed. But then it says, don't hit him uh, more than the allowed number. So the most lashes that can happen are 39. They do a medical assessment to make sure it's not going to be put his life at risk. So if he can't stand that, might go down to 5, might go down to nothing. If he can't withstand whatever the assessment is, but what's interesting is that the whole prohibition against hitting someone comes from the guy who was allowed to hit him in the first place, but not more than allowed. So you see that there is, embedded into the idea is that there is someone that's allowed to hit, it's allowed to exert force, and I guess you could say that. Well, here the guy was trying to murder somebody, so it's not the same, um, not at all. So where you're trying to maintain the peace, and somebody is getting out of hand, uh, so yeah, that's a judgment call. How do you decide how much force is necessary? um, and whether to use it at all, or just to, are you only allowed to prevent him from physically abusing others? But in other words, let's say,
Yeah, no, I have a tendency to just knock them out. Really is what I would like to do. Yeah, just
but so
knock them right out.
I'm assuming you're in a situation where somebody is creating a threat to others. Is that the case? Yes. Yeah. So what about where they're not creating a threat, they're creating a disturbance. Like they're drunk and disorderly and just nobody wants them around. And so you have to show them the door and they don't want to leave. So you have to, force them. You have to take them in hand and drag them out or something like that, or give them a tap on the rear so that they, that they'll listen before they do something worse. It's to their advantage to be taken out, side and removed from an environment where they're going to create problems. That's probably to their advantage, but they don't see it that way. So you may have to use physical force to get them to move, and you don't have to. What? So that's the question. That's what you're asking. Is what do you do? How do you assess those situations? I don't have an answer. I think I have to look into this. Let's see what the chinuch says. I got it here. Let's see if he says at 595. If he says anything more about that. Okay, can you see this on the screen? Okay, to not increase in flogging him, that the judge has been prevented from flogging the sinner extensive floggings. And the elucidation of this matter is like this, that the limit of lashes for anyone who is liable for lashes is 40 strikes minus 1, as has come through tradition, and he should not flog anyone until he is appraised of flogging, that it should be according to the ability of the one struck, and his years and his constitution and the form of his body. And if he can withstand the flogging of the complete maximum punishment, he flogs him accordingly. If he cannot withstand it, the judge flogs him according to his ability to withstand it. And there's never less than, it doesn't mean the judge himself, they got a sheriff do it, and there's never less than 3 strikes. Now, if he can't take 3, he gets nothing. Because it has to be, I think, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. So it's always a set of 3. And the fullest of the count of the number of strikes is always 40 minus 1, as we have said. And this prevention comes that he not increase striking him even 1 strike upon the number or upon that which the judge appraised that he can withstand. And about all this it is stated, you shall not increase. And so that they say in Sifri, if he increases, he transgresses a negative commandment. From here, I only have if he increases on the 40, where they know it also applies to each and every estimation that the court estimated about him. In other words, less than 40, but more than he could take. Hence, we learn to say, you shall not increase lest you increase the double language. So that shows an extra measure. Okay. And the sages reduced 1 of the 40. So that's just giving the background. The root of this command is revealed to all, is not right and is not fitting to hit a creature, except according to his evil, in order to discipline him at the behest of the court. So you need a court order. Now, from the laws of the commandment is that which they, maybe the memory be blessed, said, that when we estimate how many strikes the sinner can stand, we only estimate with a number of strikes divisible by 3. We did all that. I don't think that's going to help us on this particular issue. And this prohibition is practiced concerning not hitting any Israelite in every place and at all times by males and females. But concerning the prohibition of not increasing the lashes, that matter is only practiced at the time of the settlement of the land of Israel, when we had a court that was fit to give lashes. We don't have that anymore. And the one who transgresses this and flogged an Israelite a great flogging, such that he is obligated for it the payment of a small coin or more. In other words, he damaged him such that there would be damages to pay, is not liable for lashes, since it is a negative commandment that is given to repayment. You can pay him for the damage you did to him. And it is established for us that a person does not get lashed and also pay. You never get both. And so since you're paying, you get out of the lashes. But if he flogged an Israelite a small flogging, such that he's not obligated for the value of a small coin or more, then he does get lashes because he violated the law, even though there's no damage. And I say that it's fitting to say that this law is a novelty, that the Torah presented that part, because that's not something you would have guessed. So he doesn't really address the policeman, the person that's charged with maintaining the peace. That's why I didn't know what to say, because I don't remember any discussion of this. And we study this, but mostly the study has been about lashing and the extra, as an officer of the court that had permission to start and not do more. But what about the policeman or somebody who's charged with maintaining order and has to use force to do so? I don't have an answer. Very good question. I'll have to speak to my rabbi or others and see what I can find out. I'm going to start tonight. Okay, I have who to talk to. All right, so that's good. So that's great. I love it when I get new challenges like that. Any other comments? Because we're going to stop that's the end of the class tonight. Anybody else someone want to make a comment on this?
I'm good. I'm good.
No, I'm right.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Rabbi. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
I can tell you only one thing. I used to be a policeman when I was 20 years old. I was the dormitory supervisor in the yeshiva. So had a bunch of teenage boys that had to get to sleep on time, and some guys wanted to go to sleep. At 11 o'clock was lights out. A lot of guys, they didn't know what time meant, and they were still rousing around, and their rabble rousing didn't let other people sleep. I was determined to let people sleep. So, but I was not. I didn't use force, but what they gave me was the power to find them, so I could issue penalties of monetary penalties when they didn't behave, and then collect them. So that was the way I did it. But it was like civilized to start with them, and they weren't drunk or anything or out of control. Like, they could still make a rational decision. And I knew it. They would still be now that night, like loud that night, but tomorrow night they would be quiet because it would build up on them. So that was the way I kept the peace. But I can easily see where you get into a situation where you need to do more than that. You're not dealing with the people that are going to behave themselves, and they're disturbing everybody. What do? You are allowed to force them, and maybe you kind of have to use social pressure. It's a very good question. I have to research it.
Well, thank you for that, Rabbi. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So are we okay for tomorrow night, Rabbi?
Tomorrow we're on. Hopefully you'll have an answer to the question. Okay.
All right, folks.
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, that'll be our class for today. We will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for more Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz. And we'll continue from there. So till then, have a wonderful evening, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.